All right, Chris is out traveling again this week, so I brought in my good friend Levi Hallwell to shoot another episode, and this actually worked out perfectly because I just received the very exciting Canon C50.
Whoa, stop embarrassing yourself.
Look,
No.
Jaron messaged me, he said, you need to edit a documentary right now, you're way too busy, so I'm taking over hosting duty this week. Levi, this is my twin brother Gordon. He's a very successful cinematographer and a huge Look man, give me that camera and get the out of here. Because this is not a camera for videographers. Canon has been very clear, the C50 is for cinema, and I am a professional cinematographer. I'm Gordon Drake, this is PetaPixel, this is the Canon C50. Look, I am an incredibly busy man. I had to leave the set of the Odyssey where I'm loading the film to come back here, shoot a YouTube video. I don't have time to be looking through giant libraries of subpar stock music. That's why I use audio. They have a massive library of very diverse music from all kinds of actual musicians, not just like AI garbage. And let me tell you, my day rate is astronomical, but I still know a good deal when I see one. You can get lifetime access to this entire wonderful library of music, not for the usual $500, which is still a pretty good deal, but no, for $199 lifetime access to all of this. And if you pick up that deal, you can also get $50 off lifetime access to their entire sound effects library as well. It's a smoking deal, so use coupon code PetaPixel199 to get lifetime access to all kinds of audio goodness. Sweet, sweet audio goodness. All right, let's talk about a camera. Like, I don't need to be waving this camera around in my hands like some YouTuber. I'm trusting Levi Hallwell to film this entire episode on the C50. I mean, he's a respected director who's had films in Park City, Utah, or France. Heard of it? So this entire episode is going to be captured on the Canon C50. Let's talk a little bit about Canon C series. Now, these are their cinema-dedicated cameras, going back quite a ways, but what really sets them apart is they have a completely unique interface from all of Canon's mirrorless cameras. On top of that, they will generally have very video-optimized sensors built into them. The exception to that was the Canon R5C, which I actually reviewed a few years ago. There they took the R5, but added things like a fan, and interestingly, removed the image stabilization. And that carries forward onto the C50. Here we've got a very nice video sensor, but no image stabilization on a body built from the ground up for capturing video. And what a lovely little camera body this actually is. Weighing in at 665 grams, it's noticeably the lightest of Canon C-series bodies and really feels like you're just carrying a mirrorless camera around. But unlike a mirrorless camera, this has a lot of video-first features. It's got multiple Q20 mounts on the body for mounting options. We've got a full-size HDMI, USB-C, microphone jack, headphone jack. We also have a mini SDI for timecode sync on this. It has very fast CF Express Type B media, and you also have an SD card for your backup. Now that's the camera stripped down, but Canon also includes in the package an XLR handle, which I like. It mounts very securely with a couple of screws, gets you dual XLRs and a few more mounting points on it as well. Once you put that on, it's just over a kilogram, so it is definitely a little bit bulkier, but it's nice you can strip it down when small size is the most important thing. Looking at these features, you might be wondering, like, how is this body so much lighter than the C80? Well, one way they were able to achieve that is that this doesn't have ND filters built right in. Now that's fine for me because Levi Hallwell loves just manually changing filters in front of the lens, but some people find that a little bit annoying, and that is definitely part of why this costs less money and why it's so much smaller. Probably the most important component on a modern digital cinema camera is the sensor, and this is really interesting because we've never seen this one before. This is a full frame, pretty conventional CMOS with 32 megapixels on it, but what I find really interesting is we also saw a 33 megapixel Sony FX2 quite recently, and the readout on that thing was extremely slow. It had to crop to get into 4K 60 recording, where on the Canon C50 we can do full width 4K 60p on this, and rolling shutter is quite minimal. Now some people like Jordan use little flashing lights to figure out the readout. I don't. I just say, hey assistant camera, whip pan, and I can eyeball that and tell you what the rolling shutter is. This is right around 15 milliseconds, which is pretty good, but in extreme pans you will notice a little bit of wobble there. But that relatively fast readout has other advantages, like the ability to record open gate. Look, we got little bars on the side of the frame. That's because we're recording 7K in the full sensor 3:2 aspect ratio. And I love having this flexibility for, you know, recomposing your shot afterwards. If you've got a stuntman flying into a building and they're a little too high or a little too low, you don't want to reshoot that. You just want to reframe your shot a little bit. But it's also really great if you want to deliver vertical video as well as horizontal and just record the clip once. In fact, this has a very cool feature where it'll simultaneously record the horizontal video to the CF Express card and vertical video to the SD card. The only thing is this is very creatively stifling for an artist like me because it means you have to put your subject kind of smack in the middle of the frame. Okay, photographers, because I'm nice, I'm giving you the 30 seconds that you deserve. Now, this camera can shoot full resolution photos in JPEG and RAW, but it only has an electronic shutter. So you may run into some rolling shutter issues if you're shooting under artificial light or quickly panning with your subject. And you're not going to be able to use this with strobes. If you look at the top pin, there's actually no sync point for it to fire off-camera strobes. And really, this is kind of a backup option for photography. I'd never use it as your primary stills camera. Okay, so you might be noticing a little bit of train noise. I apologize for that. If we were on a proper set, I would just be like, shut the f up, and everybody would stop. But no, we're out here in the real world and things aren't going exactly as I'd like. But you know what? That's not a Gordon problem. Fixing the sound in post, that's a Jordan problem. One thing I do really like about the Canon C series is the way that they separate their menus. So if you put this in photo mode, it looks just like any other Canon mirrorless camera. But the nice thing is it's not cluttered with a whole bunch of video functionality in the menus and the interface. If you flick this over to video mode, then it fires up the same Canon C series menus that we've seen on those cameras for over a decade now. Now, it might look a little bit dated and can be a little bit complicated, but it's actually quite easy to use once you get used to it. Honestly, if you can't figure it out, you should just become like a first AD so you don't have to screw up anything creative and you can just get in everybody's way all day long. Now, the thing there is that means we also have two totally separate interfaces for autofocus. Now, what was weird is in previous C-series cameras, it was actually missing some of the functionality that we'd see over in Photoside. Most notoriously, there was no animal detect when you were in video autofocus on the C-series bodies. That is rectified with this. Now, we don't have dedicated modes for like vehicle detect and things like that, but I think most of the time, human detect, subject tracking, and animal detect is all you're going to need, and it's a very welcome improvement. So if you need the lens to change focus in the middle of a shot, the only way to do that is with a first AC focus puller who's got at least 20 to 25 years of experience. But people keep saying to me, Gordon, I'm not willing to put up with that. So okay, let's talk about autofocus for the other people like Jordan, of course. And I've been a little bit disappointed with the autofocus on the C-series cameras in the back because even if you turn its sensitivity all the way down, I find it's always kind of looking in the background for something else to focus on. And I did like in the R5C, they introduced subject-only detection where it's only going to look for faces, or now in this, it's only going to look for animals and not try and focus on anything else. But I've been a little bit critical of Canon's video autofocus over the last 5 years, and this is a big step up. Definitely the best focusing Canon camera that I've used, and honestly, it really competes with Sony, which I consider the gold standard. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of this camera and the entire C-series is that there is no IBIS, no in-body image stabilization with them, which really does help smooth out motion when you're handheld, especially with very small cameras like this. So here you can see the results when we're shooting without a stabilized lens, at a wide angle, just walking, and yeah, there is a fair amount of movement to it. So now we've moved over to the digital stabilization in its standard mode. We have no optical stabilization going on in the lens, and you can see it does smooth things out a little bit, but what you might also notice is that the odd frame has kind of a jerky blurriness effect, which is even worse when we move to the next mode. So now we've put the digital stabilization on high, it crops the frame again a little bit more, and you can see our frame is actually pretty solid, but we keep butting up against this issue when we're shooting slower shutter speeds, which you want to do for a cinematic look while moving the camera. And that's because when the camera moves and you're at slow shutter speeds, the whole frame blurs as a result. But if we crank it up, now we're at a 15-degree shutter, you can see we've actually got really nice clean, sharp frames, smooth movement on it, but as a result, our motion looks a little bit weird because, frankly, fast shutter speeds are unprofessional and uncinematic, you. Okay, so let's talk about image quality on the C50, and one thing that definitely makes it stand out from its direct competitor, the Sony FX3, is that this can record internal RAW video. And I want to explain something here. When people talk about RAW video, the expectation is that it's going to be dramatically better quality, like a better overall image. But really what RAW video gives you is more flexibility. We can see an example here where our white balance is completely out to lunch. Well, if I'm shooting RAW, I can properly correct for that because the white balance hasn't been baked in when it's debayering it. But it does mean there's quite a bit more work. You're going to have to apply lens corrections. You're going to have to do noise reduction manually. RAW video is quite noisy straight out of the gate. But for the vast majority of shooters looking at a camera in this price range, I think just shoot the compressed 10-bit formats with the very nice Canon C-Log2 profile. This gives you expansive dynamic range, a fair amount of flexibility in terms of adjusting color and white balance in post, and just a very nice overall image. It's a huge step up from the Canon C-Log3 that we previously saw in the R5C. All right, let's talk about high frame rate recording for a little bit, and that's where this sensor does bring us some nice benefits. It is oversampled 4K from 7K in your standard record modes. It's extremely detailed video that doesn't have a lot of noise in it because it's using all of those extra pixels. The downside is I'm a little disappointed with the 4K 120p mode. Now, we see this on a lot of cameras. There is a substantial drop in overall detail when we switch over to 120p. I kind of expected that, but what's really weird is we also lose the ability to punch in and confirm focus, and slow motion is one of the areas where I'm constantly looking at fine details. I want to make sure everything is perfect before we say action, and amazing slow motion takes place right in front of us. As well, when I'm shooting 4K 120p, I can only do it in the fast and slow mode, which means it won't capture audio. And previously when Levi was shooting some of the bike riders going around, I would have loved to have the audio of the bike hitting the rails, the tires and the jumps and things like that, but unfortunately you just don't have it if you use the slow and quick recording modes. This is a dual native ISO camera. The two native sensitivities are 800 and 6400. And if you find you're cranking your ISO honestly past 4000 ISO, it's better to just jump right to 6400 ISO and stop down because you see a nice reduction in noise there. Look, I know why you're all here. You want the Canon C50 review from one of the great cinematographers of our time. You don't want an opinion from a bunch of YouTubers or influencers or content creators. Let me tell you the real deal if you know what you're doing with this camera. So from the perspective of a true connoisseur...
The pretension and the condescension needs to stop right now. Let me wrap this video. Get out, go do whatever you do.
Okay, yeah, no, all yours. Yeah. All yours, absolutely. Try not to make a scene this Thanksgiving, okay? Oh, and say hi to Evelyn for me.
Okay, so the reason that I cut Gordon off there is I think he's really looking at the C50 in a very limited way. And I think Canon is also responsible for looking at all of their C-series cameras in the same way as well. They're like, this is a camera for film and television, high-end productions, but this is a relatively affordable camera, and it's really directly competing with Sony's FX3. And why I think that camera was so popular is because, yes, it is used on big budget movies, but also a ton of creators, YouTubers, amateurs are using that because it does give you a very comprehensive package at a lower price in a small body. And even for me, someone who makes their living shooting video content, there are some real drawbacks to the decisions that Canon have made here. For starters, not having an electronic viewfinder and a relatively low resolution LCD means I am probably going to wind up strapping a larger monitor to this, making it quite a bit bulkier. And the decision to remove IBIS, I mean, certainly in some situations you'll be able to throw it on a dolly or put it on a gimbal, but I travel with my cameras all the time where that's not an option. And the ability to rely on IBIS to get usable results while I'm hand-holding is absolutely invaluable to me. The good news is if I'm already invested in RF lenses, Canon does have the R5 too. It is a little bit more expensive, but there we get the EVF I want and the IBIS. Unfortunately, it does scale back some of the recording, but for me, usability is more important in those cases. And if I'm willing to look outside of the Canon brand, well, then things open up enormously. The Panasonic S1 II has so much of the functionality as well as outstanding image quality. I get my EVF, I get the best-in-class IBIS on that camera for quite a bit less money than this. And even looking at what Nikon has dropped with their new ZR, this camera gives me the same kind of internal RAW recording, again with IBIS, and a much bigger, much sharper LCD display if I'm not going to have the option of an EVF. I really think Canon is limiting the potential popularity of this camera by only looking at what their C-series have to offer and where this camera can fit into it, instead of making something that would challenge more alternatives in the industry by just taking a look around, seeing what other people are doing, and looking at how versatile some of those competing cameras are. But you know what? This is just my opinion, and earlier it was Gordon's stupid opinion. I want to know your opinion, so let me know in the comments below what you think of the Canon C50, and I am going to be talking about this on the podcast. You can watch it right here on the same YouTube channel, or listen to it on all of your favorite podcasting apps. And if you like what we're doing and you want to support us and not Gordon, then you should get a PetaPixel membership. You will get ads-free access to the website, the ability to check out our full resolution RAW and JPEG sample galleries, and get significant discounts from KEH, the Moment store, and the PetaPixel merch store. It's absolutely worth checking out. But thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I will see you all soon for more on PetaPixel.